to In Fearless Conversation, a podcast from 261 Fearless, where every discussion is an opportunity to shape the future. I'm your host, Kim Chafee, and together we'll explore any topic that impacts a woman's quality of life, from leadership and personal growth to health and financial security. Join me and discover how a fearless conversation can shape the future you deserve. We are back, fearless listeners, with another episode of In Fearless Conversation. And today's episode is extremely exciting for me because of a personal connection that I have with a very special program created by today's guest, Molly Barker. So I will be fangirling a little bit at the beginning of this interview, and sorry, not sorry. But years ago, when my daughter was in elementary school, I had the privilege of serving as a coach with an after-school program called Girls on the Run. Over the course of the 2 seasons that I coached there, I got to witness firsthand what happens when girls are given space to move their bodies, the tools to develop the language skills that help them express and communicate, all of those really complicated emotional ups and downs and twists and turns that completely take over their lives as they grow up. And everything led these girls to more confidence, more grit, and more joy. I truly cannot sing this program's praises enough. If you're not familiar with Girls on the Run, I will link to their homepage in the show notes, and I really highly encourage you to explore it. What began in 1996 with just 13 girls has grown into a global movement, and it has served more than, are you ready, 2.7 million girls, helping them build confidence, connection, and a strong sense of self through running and extremely meaningful conversations. And here's a fun fact. The 261 Fearless Meet Run structure is actually loosely inspired by the Girls on the Run model. That blend of intentional conversation and movement, it works for women too, right? We've seen it. So it's truly an honor for me to sit down today with the founder of this extraordinary movement, Molly Barker. She was also recently recognized with the K.V. Switzer Community Impact Award presented by Adidas, which happened last November when we were in New York City. It was an amazing event, and Molly's speech was extremely powerful and emotional. Today's conversation, we are going to talk about the positive mental impact of running, what it means to belong without shrinking. We're going to talk about how girls and women can step outside of limiting cultural narratives, and the really powerful idea that we are the authors of our own lives. This episode is about empowerment, it's about belonging, and I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. So let's get started. Molly, welcome to In Fearless Conversation. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you.
So I want to just start off and say that I have a personal connection to you because I, when my daughter was in 3rd and 4th grade, was a Girls on the Run coach. And so I can't say enough about the impact of the Girls on the Run program and what it's done for my daughter and even for me. So I just want to thank you at the top of this episode for your brilliant idea to put this program together. And I mean, it's just incredible what it's become.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, when I started it, I knew it was going to impact the girls, and I did not know what impact it would have on me, and all the adults involved. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I hear it all the time. I wish I'd had this when I was younger, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
let's start with when we did meet in person
Yeah.
for the first time.
Yeah.
I know you met a lot of people that day. It was a busy morning and a wonderful event last November at the KV Switzer Awards. You were our winner for the KV Switzer Community Impact Award. So well deserved. Tell me about what receiving that award at this point in your journey, what did that mean to you?
Well, if you could tell, I was so emotional. I do a lot of public speaking, and I actually left and I was like a little embarrassed at how emotional I got in receiving the award. And I think so much of that emotion welled up. I might do it now, thinking about what Catherine and other pioneers have done. Girls on the Run would not exist without her, the Title IX advocates, all of the things that benefited me and now benefit the kids in the program. And I had the opportunity to meet her, I think it was 2010 or something, at a Runner's World event. And I'm just smitten. Like, she's just a powerhouse, right? She's
She
just a
sure is.
powerhouse. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was an incredible honor. And also the other recipients are powerhouses, right? So yeah, the room
Absolutely.
was filled with a lot of energy. Yeah, it was amazing
Yeah.
and an honor for sure.
Let's go back and talk about where it all started. So, can you tell us why did you want to start Girls on the Run International? Like, what were you seeing with girls at that age of like third, fourth, fifth grade where they needed something and you thought running could help?
There were a couple things happening. They all conspired, sort of wrapped themselves up at the same time when I started the program. I'd been a school social worker and I had worked with adolescents and seen a lot of the challenges adolescent girls were going through, trying to conform to this imaginary box. At the time I named the girl box. And the girl box is this place where formerly vibrant, alive young women begin to sort of mold themselves to fit into the stereotypes that they think will make them popular or pretty or powerful. So that was happening. And then I was also in 1996, the year I started it, 3 years into sobriety. So I was brand new, kind of coming into my own, myself climbing out of all those boxes that I had tried to conform to. I'd been an athlete, I'd been a triathlete, I'd done Ironmans. And if you'd looked at me, you'd have thought, wow, she's a powerhouse. She's got her act together. But I was still, I kind of spiritually bankrupt, trying to fit into these social norms, and so all those things conspired. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to give girls a place where they could go their happy pace? They get to decide. Maybe it is just walking, and that's cool. Maybe it's running as fast as they can, and combine that with life lessons that help them build resilience, so that when the girl box does come, because it does, they have the tools to step outside of that box, or, to at least not stay in it as long as I had.
Yeah, that's the other piece of Girls on the Run that I love so much is the skills and tools and language to really understand what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, because it's so many new emotions, so many new experiences with friendships and all of that. And that was one piece that I just felt like, even as a mom,
Yes,
to like help my daughter understand what it was she was feeling, because I had this language that we both understood, was just so incredibly powerful. And I'm so grateful for it. That stage of life, there's so much happening, right? And you talk about them trying to fit in and limit themselves almost into this box. And instead of fitting in, you talk a lot about belonging instead of fitting in, right? Can you expand upon that?
totally. So yeah, the concept of fitting in means we have to reshape or shape ourselves in order to fit in. Like, let's say I'm a round circle and the world tells me I need to be square. I'm going to start to mold and shape myself to fit in. Creating places of belonging. Oh my God, where diversity is celebrated, but so is our collective sameness, right? We can be both like everyone, but also different. And that's what places of belonging do. And I know that that's what Catherine is doing with her
Yes.
running program, right? It's about creating these places where you can just show up as yourself and know, that you'll be treated with kindness and respect. And, one of the lessons the girls used to do, and I'm actually not sure if it's still in the curriculum or not, was creating a list of promises that they would make to themselves. In other words, how they would create the circle where that sort of belonging could happen.
Right.
And it never fails. They do that so well because they haven't yet been tainted,
Yeah.
by the boxes yet. So,
Right.
let's create a place where everybody can say what she feels, or create a place where we can all be wacky.
Right.
It's like they have that language in a different way than we do,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With
Yeah.
261, you're right. We also, the 261 meet run is loosely inspired by Girls on the Run. I know there was a meeting between Catherine and Girls on the Run at the very beginning of 261 Fearless. So there's a lot of things that mirror
Mm-hmm.
each other, and the ideas of showing up as you are and being supported in the space with whatever you bring to the space is very similar to Girls on the Run. So when talking about cultural narratives that limit women and girls, how do you see something as simple as running? Because a lot of people will be like, "Oh, it's just running." How is this that impactful? How do you see it as being so much more than that? Something that a girl can change the story about herself. And is there a certain girl that you can think of that like her story stands out to you after all these years?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's a ton of stories. I think one of my favorite, and it's just a little glimpse into a life of a girl in the program. It was just a tiny little moment. So my favorite place to stand at any Girls on the Run 5K is about 50 yards from the finish line. So it's before, because the kids are running, and that's the moment the light bulb goes off and they're like, I can do that. I did it. I've done this. It's not, I mean, the finish line is a wonderful place, but that 50 yards beforehand is amazing. Anyway, I always wait for the last runner, just because, or walker, she might be going her own pace. And this was the very first season. There was a young woman named Anna who just really didn't like to run much, but she loved Girls on the Run. So I was waiting and waiting, and eventually, finally, I saw her coming, and the sag wagon was right there with her. And she got to the finish line, she crossed, and she was like, I did it, I did it. And I was like, yes. And she was so excited and all of that. And she said, and Molly, I got to go my own pace. And I was like, yes, you did. And then she said, because I'm the boss of my own brain.
Wow.
And that to me is what running at the way that we do it at Girls on the Run and also 261 is. It gives girls and women agency, right?
Yes.
They get to decide what is the pace right for my body. So there's no run box.
Yes.
You're not, unless you want to be competitive and you want to go as hard and you want to
Mm-hmm.
race, or you can walk. But it allows girls to be intentional with their own bodies and to be thoughtful about what they want their body to do, which to me is one of the most powerful lessons a little girl or woman can have.
For sure.
That I am responsible for this. And, some of the other lessons that we have around asserting boundaries, standing up for yourself, celebrating our accomplishments, things like that. All of these things translate into a girl's life because whether we like it or not, we reach a certain age where the world can sometimes put limitations or expectations on our bodies, and to give girls and the tools to stand up for themselves and what feels right for them. That's what running does. And it did it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's magical in itself, right? In the space in which it survives, but the lessons you learn about yourself really transfer to every aspect of your life.
Everything.
And I just love how this program introduces those important concepts to girls early, before, like you said, the box shows up. Because hopefully when the box shows up, they have this seed already planted.
Yeah, they have this groundedness about who they are and what they stand for. And, I know my daughter did the program a couple times. She did not like the running at all. She's a roller skater now. She's 27 and she roller
Oh,
skates.
very cool.
But what she got out of that was just this, she's a force to be reckoned with, and she stands up for herself in ways that I'm learning from her now. So yeah, there's more to it. That running translated into other things, and it's translated into her skating and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to my next question, because you started Girls on the Run in, what you said, 1996, right?
Yeah.
And with 13 girls. And now it's reached, millions of girls everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, what have you noticed about the long-term impact of this learning confidence and connection through running at such a young age, and how it's shaped these women that are now women, right? They're all grown up.
So I don't have as much, I was a coach for, let's see, 10 years. And then I
Okay.
kind of, once, I moved into a more administrative or leadership role and wasn't coaching with the kids as much,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I missed a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And so I've kept in touch with a lot of those girls from the late 1900s and the early 2000s,
Yes.
and all of them are uniquely who they are. And it's funny, when they were little, I could see the spice of who they were. You know what I mean? Like everybody has
Yeah.
their own sort of essence, right?
Yeah.
However, they've delivered that into their adult lives in a way that feels they're unabashedly themselves. So, like, one of the first group is the works in women's sports at Nike. She was a force to be reckoned with. She was kind of one of the leaders and standing up for herself and teaching the other girls how to do that. Another young woman was kind of wacky and fun. She would say things sometimes that were like mildly inappropriate if you were an adult, but as a kid, nobody cared or knew. She's now a physician's assistant and she's doing Ironmans.
Amazing.
And she's just still the same bright, sparkly, funny, somewhat goofy person. She's very serious about her athletics. So there's something about that. And again, there's another one who is full-time mom, and good for her.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, so it's not like they have to be successful in that boxy way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it just feels like the ones who I've stayed in touch with, and it's a lot. Just kind of like who they are.
And isn't that, more than we could all hope for, to like who you are?
Yeah.
It sounds like such a simple thing, but that's hard.
It is. It really is.
And
yes.
Yeah. And like you said, not to be put into the box of what other people determine what success looks like or should look like. It's that empowerment, right? That belief in yourself, no matter what that looks like for you. It's different for everyone. When I asked you what you wanted to chat about today, one of the takeaways that you had mentioned that you hoped for this episode was that women and girls believe that they are the author of their own life. And you kind of talked a little bit about this with that little girl, Anna, saying she's the boss of her own brain. That kind of leads into this. Can you speak to that a little bit? And, was there a chapter in your own life when you felt like you had to consciously choose your direction, even if it felt uncertain or uncomfortable even?
Yeah, I think I'm doing it all the time, actually. I'm constantly challenged by cultural and societal messages. Now that I'm 60, almost 66, there's the youthful box, this expectation that I should look a certain way or act a certain way, like you have to be youthful, but you also can't act like
Right.
It's insane.
Right. It's very confusing.
So I'm constantly having to ask myself, what story am I writing about myself? What part of me am I giving away for someone else to write? So that the place in my life where that was most noticeable was in July of 1993. I had been struggling with alcohol addiction since I was 14, I guess. And I hit bottom. And the next day, on July 7th, 1993, I went on a run. And I just had this experience where I realized, like a conscious experience, that I'd been allowing the rest of the world to write my story. I'd been allowing other things and the systems and expectations and my family to define that spice that is me, that essence that is me. And I made a very conscious decision right then that I just wasn't going to do that anymore. And the conscious decision was I first had to figure out, what am I? Like, who am I? When you've been giving it away for so long, it takes a little while to figure out, wait a minute, who am I without all those labels? And that's why it took a few years before I could get Girls on the Run started, because, I had to get sober and healthy and all those things. And then 3 years later started. But that was probably the moment when that awareness came into my life. And I've been writing the story ever since. Motherhood, that's another one. Like, you have to have perfect kids and kids that make straight A's or whatever the narrative is, and yeah, all of that's just the story we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And, something you just said just kind of struck me is the whole motherhood piece in the story we write of our own lives. And I think, speaking from my own experience, when you reach a point in your life where, or I did at one point, where I felt like the only thing that identified me was my relationship to someone else. I was someone's wife. I was someone's mother. And that felt like someone else was writing my story, or I didn't have agency over what was happening. And that was a pivotal moment for me to realize something needs to change here. I need to figure something out. And, now that I'm thinking of it, and this is going to sound like it was all planned, but I promise it wasn't, that's when I started running.
I think that happens a lot. These sort of adult onset runners, women in particular, are like, this is my thing. This is my place. I get to be away from my kids and I can just
be me.
Yes.
And so you've moved on from Girls on the Run, if I'm correct, right? And so what's in the next chapter for Molly Barker as you write your story?
Yeah, well, I am writing my story. I'm actually just finished a book.
Ooh.
And this is the 30-year anniversary of Girls on the Run. So I'm hoping to get that out in September, which is the month I started it 30 years ago.
Oh,
that would be wonderful to have that out.
Yes.
And I'm training I do a lot of bike racing, less running now. And so I'm training for a couple bike races, and I'm a grandma.
Oh, well, that's fun.
I'm called Goggy.
Oh,
so
I've
got
that.
3 grandkids, and they all live near me. And now I guess my story, I'm writing, I have to be really careful not to be 24/7 grandmother.
Sure.
But I am certainly enjoying it right now a lot while they're little and around.
That's wonderful. Yeah. That's wonderful. You'll have to definitely keep us posted on the book news so that we can share it with our audience as well. I feel like I could chat with you for so much longer, but we're running to the end of our time here, so I want to be mindful of that. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you want to make sure to mention before we sign off?
I'll add one other little thing. Back when I started the program, there was not a lot of research about how running helps with mental health. It was just, I knew that when I ran, I felt level, I felt grounded, I felt peaceful. There was something it did to my nervous system, that sort of helped regulate a lot of that anxiety I might have had as a 14 or 15-year-old trying to fit in. And now there's so much research about how that kind of bilateral movement of 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, and the arms swinging actually lowers anxiety and changes sort of the frequency of our bodies and our minds. And I think that's another element of running that we're starting to understand, is how beneficial it is if it's not done to, harm or extreme.
Sure.
How just there's that whole element that's outside of competition. And maybe, you know, as a mother or a woman, that's why I identified with it so much. It was like, now I can just breathe and be in my body. You know, I can be with myself.
My goodness, this conversation is going to stay with me for a while. Talking with Molly brought me right back to my time coaching with Girls on the Run, where I saw firsthand everything Molly was talking about. How powerful the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other is, how important it is to have the tools to understand all of the emotions you're feeling when you're growing up and even as an adult, and the safe space to share your feelings with those around you. Molly, thank you so much for the incredible impact you've had from those first 13 girls to the millions around the world. I'm curious how many women listening to this episode are like me. They were or are a Girls on the Run coach, and they are now or would like to be a 261 Fearless coach. Or how many women grew up as a girl in Girls on the Run and are still running today and sharing their passion for running with others. Maybe pop into the comments on social media and let us know. Again, if you're not familiar with Girls on the Run, I've linked their website in the show notes and encourage you to check it out. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share it with someone who might like to hear it. Both of those things help our show reach new people. Okay, that's all for this week. Thanks for listening. I wish you a fearless week ahead. Let's talk again soon.